On this edition of Alberta Dugout Stories, the podcast, the state of the game in our province with Baseball Alberta's Darren Dakinder. Welcome to episode 69 of Alberta Dugout Stories, the podcast. I'm Joe McFarland. This is our final episode for 2019 as we take a break for the Christmas season. And while we head towards 2020, it's also an opportunity for us to take a look back on the year that was and look ahead to the year coming up. Back on episode 2 of the podcast, we did a State of the Union with Baseball Alberta Executive Director Darren Dakinder and thought it would be great to catch up again. We talked about some of the things top of mind going forward, including facilities and space, respect in sport, the women's game, and hosting big events again in 2020. Darren, thanks so much for joining us on the podcast.
Happy to be here. Good to see you again, Joe.
It's been about a year since the last time we chatted for the podcast, and a lot has happened over the course of the year, and so I'm going to start off there. When you look back on 2019, how are you going to remember it?
2019 has a couple things kind of going on for it. One is we're starting to see our overall enrollment, player enrollment, starting to flatten out a little bit. And I think that that's a reflection in part of many of our associations reaching the wall on diamond capacity. So just having enough sort of diamond space to facilitate the growth of the sport, we're starting to kind of hit that upper limit. And I think that a number of them are trying to work with their municipalities to find ways to increase diamond capacity. I guess the other really, really big highlight that I remember from last year is in our 18U AAA division, we tier the grouping. So we have a top tier and a second tier of those teams, and we started that here a couple of years ago. And this year, the Tier 2 team was the Northern Lights Academy from Grand Prairie, and they won the Tier 2 championship, which gives them the right to go to the Tier 1 championship with a chance to go to the Nationals or Westerns. And at the Tier 1 level, they managed to get to the championship game, where they lost by 1 run. And they ended up representing us at Westerns, and they got a silver at the Western Canada Championships. And to me, it's kind of a really good indication of why tiering is important and why you need to give all the teams an opportunity. You got to give them that shot because you never know how far they're going to go.
Even beyond that is to be able to see how different areas of this province, it's not just one or the other that's competitive. There's some competitiveness across the board now.
Yeah, for sure, Joe. I mean, we're really fortunate. I mean, Fort McMurray has a really good program. There's lots of good programs in the Edmonton area, Calgary area as well. The Calgary Junior Dinos, the Okotoks Dogs, as everybody would know. But, St. Albert also has a really good program. St. Albert was our 18U representative at Nationals this year. Parkland, Sherwood Park, Red Deer. I mean, these are pretty consistent performers for us across the province.
And obviously, the other aspect of this is you mentioned earlier about the space issues, and when you're starting to see, Sylvan Lake's getting a WCBL franchise as an example, and you have Brooks that's looking to go in a different direction. You've got these different programs that are all doing well. It's only going to add to the prestige, I suppose, of creating more at the grassroots level because you got kids that are going to some of these games and seeing some high quality talent.
No question. What they're doing in Sylvan Lake, I think, is awesome. And you're exactly right, Joe. It will lead to greater interest in the sport in the community. The kids will go. They'll meet the players. They'll, have some of their inspiration created there. And I expect that Sylvan Lake Minor Ball will be one of the next big growth stories in Baseball Alberta.
How important is it from your perspective to get the ball rolling on some of these expansions sooner rather than later because you don't necessarily want to lose out on some of the momentum that has been built over the last little while?
Yeah, I think it is really important, Joe. In 2017, our board created a program that we call the Facility Grants Program, where we are able to provide money to our member associations for specific investment in facilities. And we've invested nearly $200,000 in the last 3 years in places all over the province. Again, all these same communities I just talked about, but even smaller communities, Castor and Elk Point and places like that, who are also growing their programs. And I think that's been a big part of our organization's way to support some of these activities, to provide matching grant funds where that's required, or even just a base grant so that we can get the diamonds refurbished or new diamonds built to help the game grow.
How impressed are you with just kind of the overall growth of the game? Because you're seeing different pockets starting to develop whether it's an academy out in Badlands or whether it's, as you mentioned, the Elk Points and the Casters. I mean, all of a sudden that grassroots game is starting to rebound a bit.
Yeah, the grassroots is absolutely critical to everything that's been part of our success the last 10 years, and will continue to be the sort of bedrock of success, I think, in the future. The way that you grow this game is to get young players interested in playing the game in their communities and letting their talent and their abilities and maybe finding some coaches in their community so that their opportunity to succeed emerges. And I think that many, many organizations that we have across the province are doing a great job in that area. And that's where the grassroots growth comes from. And we always point to the great success stories at the top. Everybody loves to see it. I told you St. Albert Cardinals went to the 18U National Championships, and years past there's been, teams from all over the province that have happened to go to that event. Everybody kind of looks at that as sort of a big prestige event. But the work to get that 18-year-old to go there is really all of that grassroots stuff that happened before across the province.
Not only that, but you're also getting those opportunities where you're hosting different events in this province as well. I know Okotoks did one. I know Fort McMurray's had a couple. I mean, there's been those opportunities there that are really putting the sport in the spotlight. And beyond that, it's making other communities say, hey, we could do that too.
Yeah, no question. I mean, in 2020, for example, the Okotoks Dogs are going to be hosting the 15U National Championships. And the Fort McMurray Oil Giants are going to be hosting the Canada Cup. So, these are definitely prestige events to have in our province. And you're right, they also contribute to the growth of the game.
Talk a little bit about the game itself. And I know we just went through your AGM and convention and had a bunch of different meetings, different breakout sessions. From the gameplay perspective, anything that ball players, ball families in this province should be keeping an eye on?
Yeah, I think I may have mentioned this to you once before, Joe, but an area of discussion that we've had the last couple of years has been kind of what age category is the right age category to introduce the ability to throw curveballs. And, the research really is not settled on, whether that's something that increases the risk of injury or does not increase the risk of injury. And we would be, I believe, the only province left in Canada that has prohibited throwing curveballs at the 13U level. And for 2020, that's going to be a change. We're going to permit that starting next year, and we'll see where that goes with the development of the sport. So that'd be one example of probably a significant change, certainly for that age category.
Mm-hmm. How important is it going to be from a coaching perspective to be able to teach the kids properly? Because I know that there's been a lot of focus on Tommy John surgery and making sure you're not wearing out arms while throwing a curveball is one of those things that does require a little bit more of a nuance to it.
Yeah, I think it's absolutely critical that the coaches teach it properly. And in fact, I would go so far to say that if there's a coach who does not think that he can teach it, then I think that would be not the time to introduce that to his team, whether the league rules permit it or not. It's paramount that we protect the athletes and we introduce these things when we're competent to do it and when they're ready for it.
How are you facilitating that, I suppose, becomes the question. Will there be seminars put in place? Are you expecting coaches to get certain levels of certification? How do you kind of backstop yourself for that?
So there's a national program called the National Coach Certification Program, and there's a number of modules that I won't kind of go into a lot of detail about, but in essence, I think that's the vehicle through which we provide training and education to our coaches, and that ultimately will be the vehicle that we use to ensure that at least some instruction is provided around teaching the curveball to younger players.
Any other topics that have been bubbling up for you and your members?
Yeah, I guess, I've talked about lots of the big positive sort of things, but, one area in the media the last couple of years that's gotten a great deal of attention is situations in which maybe athletes are exposed to potential sexual abuse from coaches. And so that's a great area of focus, both nationally and provincially in our sport. So, for example, one of the things that we introduced in 2019 is we introduced a 24/7, 365 hotline, so that athletes would be able to confidentially and anonymously report any instance that they would experience, so that we could, investigate these things and do what we can to protect our youth from these kinds of exposures.
So, obviously, the same kind of deal, I would assume. Especially lately, we've been talking a lot about hockey coaches and that. But is that something that has kind of been on your radar as well? Is something that whether it's racism or anything else, that gets flushed out right away?
Yeah. So all those kinds of those, we'll call them conduct areas, and by saying that, I don't mean to diminish anything to do with the topic that I just mentioned, but for sure, we want a way to both train our coaches, and we have a number of methods to do that, primarily starting with respect in sport, which is mandatory for our coaches, but we also want a vehicle through which the players who maybe are experiencing something that is offside, for them to be able to report it so that we can address it.
Let's go back to your AGM and convention for a second. You had a special guest by the name of Mike Soroka as the guest speaker. What did it mean to have someone of Mike's caliber come in and chat with the kids, especially after that successful start to his major league career?
Yeah, it was an awesome experience to have somebody of Mike's caliber, but probably more importantly, of Mike Soroka's character, be a guest at our banquet. Mike's a very articulate young man. I thought he was terrific in terms of his interactions with our players and with all of the members that were present at the banquet. The part of the story I'll tell you, Joe, that I think is really cool is, we reached out to Mike probably not right around this time last year. So kind of prior to his, we'll call it his huge breakout success that he had last year. And we reached out to Mike because he is a homegrown Alberta talent. And we thought it'd be really cool if he could be a guest at our banquet. And we kind of got all that stuff sort of wrapped up really early in the year, long before spring training. And got him to be our guest. And then his season turned into what it was, and that just, I think, was like the icing on the cake. It was an awesome opportunity then for our players to hear from somebody who, is early in his journey, but a journey that many of them aspire to, and I thought that was really cool.
Well, and he's not that far removed from their journey either. I mean, at the age of 22, he's still going through it. It's not like you're hearing from, 45-year-old or a 50-year-old who played way back when. It's somebody who's living the dream as they speak, and they may see a little bit of themselves in what he's doing now.
Yeah, I mean, you had three of our players of the year on an earlier podcast here a few weeks ago, and I mean, you heard how much they spoke about how inspirational it was to have somebody so close to their age, make this journey. And I mean, I think Connor Pope mentioned that this, in his mind, opens the doors for him and others to maybe pursue their dreams too. And that creates its own excitement.
On a personal level, what did you take away from Mike being there?
I was so impressed with the young man. He was so gracious, in his handling of both the media as well as all the requests for autographs and pictures and all that kind of stuff. And I can tell you that I'm just, as somebody who has the privilege of leading this organization, I was just so grateful that he was, the gracious guest that he was, and that what he did by making himself so available, I think offers so much to our members.
What does it mean to baseball in this province to have somebody like Mike, but even others who are coming back and making sure that they're giving back to the baseball community, whether it's through coaching, whether it's through seminars, catching clinics? I know Jordan Precision does that in Okotoks. I mean, there's so many that have tried to make a go of it or are still in the midst of making a go of it, and they're still trying to blaze a bit of a trail, I suppose, for those up-and-comers now.
Yeah, that's a really neat topic that you're touching on, Joe. I think we've seen a lot of that in the last number of years where, players have come back, and sometimes at the pro level, but sometimes even at the college level, and have kind of reconnected with their local community association they grew up in, or maybe they've moved back to a different town and they're with a different community, but they've tried to find a way, as you said, to coach, to get involved with some of the programming. You mentioned Jordan Procession. I mean, I'll give a shout out to Shane Dawson, who's involved with the Strive Academy in Calgary. Shane coached on one of our Team Alberta women's teams last year, and Shane has found a way to try to get reconnected, if you will. Shane was a terrific baseball player for Parkland, then the Spruce Grove White Sox, when they were going to nationals.
It's just amazing to see how the community seems to be rallying around each other and realizing, hey, there's an opportunity here for us to grow, but really grow in a substantive way where you're seeing more players that are not only competing but doing really well on bigger stages, whether it's the men or also the women as well.
Yeah, I mean, you kind of given me a great segue to the women's program, which I haven't really talked about too much. But I mean, we had 5 players from Alberta make it to the national team this year. We had a couple of Jespersons, because I think that's the first family of female baseball in Alberta. But we also had Kelsey Lawler and Madison Willen and Caitlin Ross, and so having those players achieve their goals as well. And then we could talk about all the great male players that have come through the last number of years, and several have been drafted. Folks like Eric Sabrowski and Tanner Kerwer and Matt Lloyd, and I mean the list kind of goes on and on of relatively recent players that have maybe had some opportunity to play at the next level.
You mentioned the women's game earlier, and I wanted to revisit that one for a second. Alberta hosted the National Women's Championship in Okotoks this summer, and I mean, weather notwithstanding, another success there. When you look at that side of the sport, along with some of the great ambassadors like Nicole Lachansky and Kelsey Lawler over the last few years, you have to be really pleased with the growth there.
Yeah, it's true. Our team is very young in that regard, and the Nicole Lachanskys and Taras Lakonich and many others that I'm sure I should be remembering all their names that I won't. The Northcotts, for example, Heidi and Heather Northcott. I mean, it was those girls that sort of established a lot of the programming that we have now. And I'd be remiss if I didn't give a shout out to Chris James, who's Baseball Alberta's girls and women's technical coordinator, and all that he's doing for our program in terms of coaching, technical development, and really identifying a lot of these female athletes out there and getting them to discover their interest in baseball and the talent that they might have.
Mm-hmm. If you were to give a state of the game right now in our province, what would you say about it?
I think our game is healthy. I think it's strong and vibrant. I think the challenge, there's a lot of challenges to make this game kind of grow going forward. Some of the ones that I've alluded to in the call earlier. I think that we have a very bright future. I think we've got a strong base. I think we have some great volunteers across this province and some really strong organizations. And we're fortunate because those organizations really identify and build those players up. If we were to sit down in a year's time for another State of the Union, what do you hope you're able to accomplish? That's a great question. A couple things that I would, love to see is I would love to see at one of these events that Alberta is going to have the opportunity to host next year. I would love to see us win a national championship in our home province. I'd love to see the Okotoks Dogs win the 15U national championship. So there's a certain cachet, if you will, that comes with winning a national championship to begin with. But to win it at home, I think makes it more special. So there'd be some goals kind of around that. I want our grassroots members to continue to grow. I want them to continue to focus on offering the Rally Cap program, working on developing 9U baseball and 11U baseball at the House League level. And I think that a year from now, as long as we're still talking about the successes that all those small communities are having across our system, I think that that'll keep the sport vibrant forever.
It has been a lot of fun to cover the sport this year and looking forward to 2020. Darren, thanks so much for joining us on the podcast, as always.
My pleasure. Thanks so much for having me, Joe.
Thanks again to Baseball Alberta's Darren Dakinder for joining us on the podcast this week. And as always, a giant thanks to you for downloading and listening. Whether it's your first time or if you're a long-time listener, we are so incredibly grateful for you checking us out. We'd also like to tip our caps to our sponsors, the Okotoks Dogs, Dogs Academy, the Western Canadian Baseball League, and the Vauxhall Academy of Baseball, as well as all of our partners for their continued support. We have been absolutely blown away by all of your love here on the podcast and at albertadugoutstories.com. So on behalf of Ian and myself, thank you. We'd also like to wish you and yours a Merry Christmas and a wonderful New Year. We'll see you again in 2020.